talk shit about the Diaz bros, you get slapped, motherfucker. Don't talk about Nate and Nick Diaz, motherfucker. You get slapped where I'm from. You talk about the GOAT, you get slapped.
People like that get slapped.
I gotta be honest, the downfall of the Diaz brothers shatters my heart the same way that John Jones shatters his wife's heart every time he beats. But anyways, the Diaz brothers have had a horrific downfall from not just the UFC, but from the world of combat sports. And we'll start with Nate Diaz, right? He was supposed to fight Khamzat Chimaev all the way back at UFC 279, but Khamzat Chimaev came in because he ate too many burgers and steaks. He came in fat, and so Nate Diaz ended up facing Tony Ferguson. And this was just one of the worst fights I've ever seen. It looked like two old Mexicans trying to fight for the last torta at the function. It just looked terrible. Again, it was a pathetic performance from both. But Nate somehow ends up winning. He gets a fluke submission on Tony Ferguson. Washed Tony Ferguson. I mean, both guys were well beyond washed at this point, and he wins. And then he has a post-fight speech where he says he's going to go on to do a bunch of things outside the UFC, and then he goes on to face Jorge Masvidal in the famous rematch of the fight we've all been waiting for, right? Because the first fight was so epic. It's not like Nate Diaz got his ass beat completely for however long the fight lasted, because it ended in a freaking cut doctor stoppage. And he gets a decision against Masvidal, but in my opinion, it was a robbery. I thought Masvidal clearly beat Nate Diaz in that fight, but he's not as big of a name, I guess, as Nate Diaz. Then it's the fight we've all been waiting for, Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul, and it's shit. It's nothing. It's just a nothing fight where Nate Diaz gets dropped a bunch of times by Jake Paul, and Jake wins a decision pretty clearly. It wasn't, you even saw the Diaz fans cope and say, but if it was 20 rounds, if it was infinite rounds, Nate Diaz would have won, bro. Like, yeah, and if my aunt was my uncle, she'd have balls. So again, lost a unanimous decision to Jake Paul, robbed Jorge Masvidal, and then that's been it. He hasn't had any boxing fights, any jiu-jitsu matches. He hasn't been in WWE. He hasn't been in PFL. Nothing. This guy's done nothing, but he left the UFC because he wanted to explore other options. I'm sure he's made a cool couple mil from fighting Jake Paul, from fighting Masvidal. But what's it, like, who cares? Like, just who cares? Honestly, who cares? I almost forgot to mention the fact that Brendan Schaub clowned and cooked Nate Diaz. Brendan Schaub, the biggest retard in the UFC. Well, former retard. Well, he's still a current retard, but he was formerly in the UFC. And he cooked you, Nate Diaz. You know how embarrassing that is?
What are you going to do, Nate? What are you going to do? Volume punch me, motherfucker?
He is now saying he wants to return to the UFC. He's been saying this for the last couple of months. He's been asking, who's the welterweight champion? Who's it, Bilal? I don't care about Bilal's bitch ass. And he's asking who's the welterweight champion. Now, and I've seen this recently, this is kind of what prompted me to do this video. He's calling out names like Ilia Topuria, Conor McGregor, freaking the winner of Canelo Crawford.
That little Ilia Topuria, he's doing a really good job. He's a little small for me. And then on the boxing side, obviously Canelo or Crawford. I ain't asking for nothing, but when I whip someone's ass, I'm gonna get them motherfuckers too, you know what I'm saying? With all due respect. So that's my plan.
What is he doing? I don't understand this guy. I mean, bro, you left the UFC. You beat Tony Ferguson. You should have just retired, rode off into the sunset. We would have not missed you. I'm kidding. I like Nate Diaz, but 2025 Nate Diaz, he's calling out Ilia Topuria. Do you guys understand how delusional that sounds? He's calling out the man that has KO'd every one of our favorite legends. How do you think that fight will go? Nate Diaz is a chindo. Nate Diaz is a chindo. Please, stop it. Even this gay, insane Conor McGregor probably beats 2025 Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, please be quiet. You should have just either stood in the UFC or stood retired, or just stood in, where is he, from California, just stood on the beach and just smoked your weed all day. But instead, you're calling out these guys that you know you can't beat, and you know you're never going to... The UFC are not bringing you back. Let's be honest. It's 2025. Your stock is at an all-time low. No one cares. Now, moving on to Nick, the thick one, Diaz. He was suspended after UFC 183 for marijuana. Kind of insane, in my opinion. And his initial suspension time was 5 years. 5 years for fucking marijuana, right? Has John Jones ever been suspended for 5 years for PEDs? I always got to bring up John Jones because I do not like that, man. But because it's a fair question, right? I mean, 5 years for weed, that's not even... I just don't understand. He was also fined $165,000, which for an MMA fighter is a lot of fucking money. These guys, that's what they get paid to show up and to win. So he was fined that much money for some weed. Now they reduced it to 18 months, and I believe they lowered the price to like $100K after he appealed it. Still 18 months for some weed. Again, it's still kind of ridiculous. Now, he had also received a 90-day suspension and a $20,000 fine for using a homophobic slur on one of his opponents. Look, if I was recorded saying everything I say off camera, I would be probably fined. I mean, I'd be like minus $1 million in debt. Let's just say that. But he did tweet it, so I guess nowadays maybe they're more lax on it. I'm not sure. I mean, Sean Strickland goes on insane rants, and you got other fighters that go on these crazy rants. But I guess back then they were more strict. Yeah, sorry, Nick. You can beat people up to a bloody pulp, but you can't say the word that rhymes with maggot to one of your opponents. You know, it is what it is. I am waiting for the day that Tom Aspinall fights John Jones so he can call him that as well. But during his suspension, I believe he does a couple of interviews. One notable one being one he did with Ariel Helwani. And it was the saddest interview you've ever seen. I mean, this guy, he had signs of CTE, depression. It was completely heartbreaking. He then goes on to make his grand return against Robbie Lawler, where he looked completely out of shape. And he just lost by like a weird, I don't even know. It was like a TKO kind of. He just gave up. He came into that fight fat. He looked, I don't even know what to say. It was like the most pathetic legend performance I've ever seen. He wasn't even trying. And then he just dips. We don't see him again for a while. Then he gets announced to fight Vicente Luque, but pulls out with an injury? Meth? Cocaine? I'm not sure. But around that time, there was video of him doing meth or crack or some sort of drug outside. I'm not sure. Any of you meth heads in the comments, let me know. But he was doing some sort of something outside while his girlfriend was recording him, asking if he was okay. And now, apparently, he's in some sort of rehabilitation center. So, now, while I was editing this video, I actually looked into the whole girlfriend thing a little bit. And apparently Cesar Gracie, who's like, I guess he's a head coach for, this Gracie BJJ gym. He said Nick Diaz is healthy, he's well, and he does not have a girlfriend. So I'm not really sure if Nick Diaz has a girlfriend. Maybe his girlfriend is the crazy one. Maybe his girlfriend is some sort of meth addict that tried to get Nick Diaz to do meth with her. I'm not sure, but like all jokes aside, I actually found this pretty interesting. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that and the whole girlfriend thing. But he seems to be well, I guess, according to Cesar Gracie BJJ. So that's about it. It's pretty sad what has happened to both of these guys. I know they're some of your guys' favorite fighters. I like the Diaz bros. I mean, I like Nick Diaz. I like Nate Diaz. I think Nick Diaz is pretty underrated as well, to be honest with you. So it is pretty sad what is going on with them, but it is what it is. Make sure you guys like and sub. Become a member in the description. And yeah, this, originally I was going to just do a video on how delusional Nate Diaz is about, wanting to fight Ilya and Connor. But then I just realized these guys have had a bad last couple of years. So I might as well do an entire video breaking it down. See you guys. Peace.